Today on Beyond 6 Seconds.
When you make the choice that is more difficult, that is the one that is more daunting, it's more challenging, it's literally the one that nobody else would expect you to take, except you go ahead and do it, that's when you are living life on cloud nine. So for me, it's my tagline is that I want to see the road less traveled in bumper-to-bumper traffic.
Welcome to Beyond 6 Seconds, the podcast that goes beyond the 6-second first impression to share the extraordinary stories and achievements of everyday people. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Jordan Gross. Jordan is a Northwestern and Kellogg School of Management graduate, a 2-time startup founder, a TEDx speaker, and a #1 best-selling author. His upcoming book, The Journey to Cloud 9, provides a new approach to the personal development world by using fictional storytelling to reveal some of life's most meaningful principles. Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Carolyn. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited for our chat today. I know we connected through Justin and Gary over at Young and Dumb, and now I'm excited to talk to you, and I'm just really appreciative to be on your show today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you here today. Yeah, so tell me about your upcoming book and what gave you the inspiration to write your new book, The Journey to Cloud 9?
Yeah, so this is an amazing story because, so this is my second book. And with the first book, I get that. So what's your origin story? Was there an aha moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I answer that one with, my aha moment was the realization that you don't need an aha moment for beauty to strike or to create something that you really want to create. But with The Journey to Cloud 9, there was this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful alignment of the stars. So it was November 2018, and it was a Sunday evening. And I had spent that Sunday, I'm in New York City, so I live in Midtown. I spent that Sunday downtown at a friend's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an honestly really introspective weekend for what we usually have on a football Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
We usually talk about, nonsensical guy stuff. We usually eat wings and, curse at the TV because our fantasy teams aren't doing well. But on this particular Sunday, it was a little bit different because we're high school buddies and one of our acquaintances from high school passed away. So we kind of spent a good amount of time talking about some deeper subjects. We talked about life and love and death and meaning and purpose. And for me, especially, I had just finished reading Mitch Albom's new book called The Next Person You Meet in Heaven. So my mind was just on this introspective role, and I was just thinking a lot. And then I got in an Uber to head back up to Midtown to go home that night. And whereas I'd normally be the person who speaks to the Uber driver and tries to get somebody like that who sort of goes through the motions and often is ignored into a conversation and ask him or her about their life and things like that, because of the introspective day that I had, I just kind of wanted to sit in the back seat and let my thoughts simmer in my mind until I saw a boat in the East River called Cloud 9. And I thought that's too cool of a boat name to pass up the opportunity to talk about. So I said to the Uber driver, hey, that boat, it's called Cloud 9. What does that mean to you? What does living your life on Cloud 9 mean to you? And his responses were absolutely fascinating. And they are the foundations for what the Journey to Cloud 9 ultimately ended up becoming. So he told me stories about the day he got married, the day he had his children, the day he was a child, and he remembered this inexplicable moment of true joy and laughter that he had. He told me about, making money in his Uber driving. He told me about heading back to his home country and being able to support his family there. And he gave me all these stories where there were these pivotal life experiences in which he just felt this uninterrupted rush of euphoria. And with those answers, I kind of thought, wow, I have something here. So I kept asking people, what does Cloud 9 mean to you? And I've been doing interviews ever since, hundreds of interviews, just with simple questions. What does a Cloud 9 moment look like for you? What does a Cloud 9 day look like for you? Morning, life. And I've taken away some really key insights from that. And I wanted to share it with the world. But I didn't want to share it with the world in the same way that other people share it with the world. My mind always works a little bit differently. I always try to tweak things and make them my own. So rather than just telling these stories and having a quote unquote self-help book, I decided to make a fictional book about these stories that I heard. So the book itself, to answer your question very simply, is called The Journey to Cloud Nine. And like you mentioned in the beginning, it's this fictional approach to personal development where what I hope is that people get so invested in the characters and the plot and the twists and the turns within the story that they forget that these life concepts are sprinkled in throughout. And they just see themselves in the characters and sort of live according to how those people live their lives, because those are my ultimate recommendations for how to live a Cloud Nine life. So basically for me, I always want to guide people to the answers and allow them to interpret rather than just give the answers. So that's what I did with the book. And that's really what Cloud Nine living is all about.
That's very interesting, because I would imagine that even that term Cloud Nine, I mean, we have the term in English, and you can, I would imagine everyone kind of has their own idea of what that means for them.
Right.
Do you just literally ask the question and let people tell you however they interpret it and just tell you what their answer is?
Exactly. So what does it mean to you, Carolyn? I'll ask you, I'll flip the script here a little bit. What does it mean to you?
For me, I think, it's really where I could be at a point where I'm doing what I'm passionate about that really brings value to people. So I feel that a lot, honestly, when I'm podcasting, when I'm really making a strong connection with someone through a one-on-one conversation. And I think a lot of podcasters who do these types of interview style podcast would say the same, that it's really this one-on-one where you're learning about people. And sometimes I get the chance to help them tell their stories, often for the first time, which is really special for me. So for me, that's really where I feel like I'm in flow, I'm self-actualized, I'm all those psychological terms, but really that's all tying into that Cloud Nine moment.
Amazing. And you mentioned something in the beginning that is so eye-opening in all the stories that I listened to. You mentioned that it's basically the freedom to be doing what you love and what you're passionate about. And the concept of the book basically takes you on this man's journey through life. And in his real life, he made decisions during these pivotal moments where he chose based off of societal expectations and what people around him wanted him to do, which you'll see ultimately did not lead to his Cloud Nine life. But what the book also provides is a juxtaposition with his life in the clouds, where he visualizes this experience where he relives those momentous life occasions and sees the path that he could have taken had he made the decisions based on his passions, his heart, his intuition, and the life that he ultimately wanted to live for himself.
Interesting. So is it one continuous narrative with different characters, the fictional story in your book?
Yeah, so it's one continuous narrative about one man's life, and the other characters are basically the supporting roles who allow him to realize for himself what his Cloud Nine life could have looked like and what his Cloud Nine life still could be. So basically, as he travels through the clouds in this, it's sort of magical realism, right? Where he's literally in his bed dreaming about this Cloud Nine experience. And he travels from Cloud 1 to Cloud 2 to Cloud 3, all the way to Cloud 9. And each cloud is a different concept that I have encountered in speaking to people about the moments that create their Cloud 9 lives.
Interesting. So this is a really interesting concept. I think it's something that, a lot of us struggle with as we try to find our way in our lives and our careers and, really finding out what we all want to do when we grow up and how we find our Cloud Nine moments. And you mentioned that this started in 2018. So last year when you got the idea for the concept of Cloud Nine. And I know you also share other people's stories through videos and other written content for Cloud Nine. How did that all come about? Because I know from reading your bio and your LinkedIn profile, it seems like there was a relatively recent transition, maybe the year before, that helped you kind of start to think in this way.
Yeah. So to rewind just a little bit, I myself am somebody who is currently on my own journey to Cloud Nine because, and the protagonist in the book, his name is Jerry. I was living a life much like Jerry up until just a few years ago, like you said. And starting from when I was in middle school and high school, I was by the book. I got good grades and I focused on my academics and my athletics. I was good at soccer. So then I went to college, and in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I asked, the people around me, and they said, hey, study economics and get your finance and investment banking internship and you'll make a lot of money and have a good life. So that's what I did. And all the while, I was never really thinking for myself. So it wasn't until just this last year where I actually I did a lot of personal development growth, my master's year program. So when I was 22 to 23, I was listening to podcasts and reading a lot of books and reflecting on them. And I was trying to find out and pursue my passion early on, something that would truly light me up. And I can start this mission from a very early age. So I thought that was in the food and restaurant world, where I would just get into that life and open restaurants and help people because, a couple of things that we do every single day are, drinking, eating, breathing. So I wanted to help people in that eating category. I realized pretty quickly, though, that I was in it for the wrong reasons. And I chose the role that I did because it was this, prestigious leadership and management program where I had a high salary. I was living in New York City in this apartment that they were paying for me. And I was a 23-year-old who was leading individuals on my team who were 3 times my age. And it wasn't me. I wasn't making an impact on the people who I thought I should be in this world. So I quit that and I wrote my first book, which was all about how to overcome stress and anxiety with positive routines and mindset routines. And that's where all this learning came in. That's where I started to immerse myself even more with this world of content and showing other people how to live meaningfully and purposefully. So that's why I've been doing all this for the Journey to Cloud9. It's because I'm taking a totally different approach in which I self-published that first book, Getting Comfy. And I figured it all out afterward. And I went on a couple podcasts and I did a TED Talk and I did, a couple of speaking engagements at high schools and startup companies and things like that. But I was just working my way through it and seeing what worked for me and what worked for other people. And now that I've sort of figured it out, I am now treating the Journey to Cloud9 like it is a book that's already out there in the world. So I just want people to know all that they can know about how to live their Cloud9 lives. And the only way I can do that is by presenting the most diverse range of perspectives on it that I possibly can. So that's why I try to put content out there every single day, share a lot of different stories. And then obviously here we are doing podcasts where I get to speak about it myself as well.
I see. So really your first book, which you said was called Getting Comfy, that was written shortly after or around the time that you were either thinking of leaving or had left your sort of traditional corporate management job in food and retail? Or were you still working when you started it? Like, how did that transition work out? Was it very sudden? You just sort of left one day, or did you kind of have the idea before you made the change?
Yeah, so that's a funny question because I wouldn't recommend other people do this unless you're totally like a risk seeker like I am. And I left without a plan at all. I didn't have this book written. I had realized that I had about 75 pages of notes in a Word document based off of my own reflections on different personal growth and development podcasts and books that I was reading. But there was no book, there was no storyline, there was no format. In November when I quit my job, I quickly put that together in about 4 weeks, did a little bit of preliminary, launch strategy. And then January 31st, 2018, Getting Comfy, Your Morning Guide to Daily Happiness was out there for people to consume. But just, going back to your question, I quit that job with absolutely no, income at the time. I quit that job with no real sense of structure or where I was going to be, no real sense of purpose. It was more of this trial period where I just needed to get out of what I was doing at the moment and really explore and figure things out on my own.
Wow. So that is a big risk to kind of step out into the unknown.
Yeah.
The traditional advice is always to have a plan or have a backup. But, sometimes when you step out into open possibilities, things appear. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you're so right. And it comes back to fearing the what if more than the actual what. Right. In everything that I do, and, one example is basically I've started a couple of startup companies in my life, and not big ones, but it's because I let the fear of the what if always outweigh the fear of the what. And what I mean by that is, in college, I had this idea to start an Alzheimer's awareness group. And, it was daunting. I'd never started anything in my life. I didn't know what a business meant. I didn't know how to get people to support my cause. I didn't know what the structure was going to be. I didn't know all of these things. But what I also didn't know was what could happen, 5 years down the road, looking back and not having started that organization. I didn't know what all the amazing things that could have happened were going to be, right? Mm-hmm. So because the fear of the what doesn't really scare me, of going through that learning experience, understanding how to build and grow something, doing everything as it comes along and, treating them every failure as an opportunity, I go ahead and I do things rather than, sitting here and saying, what if 4 years ago I would have started that Alzheimer's organization? That scares me so much more, that thought, than actually going ahead and doing something.
Yeah. And I think we get intimidated sometime by, seeing the project as the end goal and, not knowing how to get there and thinking of all the things that could go wrong. But, really it's one step at a time. And I guess everybody does something for the first time. So no, that's great that you're able to think about what would happen if you didn't pursue this dream or this project that you really wanted to.
Right. And you mentioned, so sorry to keep going on this, but you mentioned, goal setting there. And setting goals are essential. You need to set goals because you need to have a direction that you're going in, right? Mm-hmm. But I just heard something recently that was so profound, and I'd expressed this message even in my first book, but the way that I heard it this time really hit home. And it was Cheryl Strayed, who wrote the book Wild. Mm-hmm. She was talking on Oprah's Super Soul Conversations. And she basically said, I was doing yoga one time and I was so frustrated because I could never look like the instructor. And I went up to the instructor one day and I said, how come I'm never going to look like you do when I do yoga? And the instructor said to her, yoga is not about striking the perfect pose. It's about reaching for it. So whenever I set a goal and whenever you guys set goals as listeners, it's not necessarily about achieving that goal, but rather it's about becoming the person who can achieve that goal, right? And doing all the behind the scenes work that allows you to really experience what it's like to get to that goal, right? And then once you reach it, that's just a little piece. It's actually the process that you're enjoying so much more in the journey.
Right. The goal really isn't the end game. And
not at all.
Yeah.
Can't be.
Right.
Because then what's next?
Exactly. Yeah. So you're never really done, which is, in some ways scary, but in some ways really liberating. There's always somewhere else to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's see. So you have all kind of projects that you're working on now. You're going to be a 2-time author. You've got your blog where you share stories and videos, your public speaking. And I understand you do coaching. Is that around the Cloud9 concept as well?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I'll be totally forthright about the coaching and really, finding purpose in general. I think it is one of the most difficult things we can pursue as human beings. And there are no right answers in telling somebody how exactly they're going to follow a step-by-step process to discover their passion or their purpose. I just don't think it works like that. I think it needs to come to us. I think it takes a long, long, long time. But with that being said, what I try to do, based off of my own experiences, my own research, my interviews, I try to develop a framework for people who feel stuck, who feel purposeless, who feel like they don't really know the direction that their life is going in. I try to develop a framework so that they can get unstuck and they can develop a sense of direction. So yeah, that's what I do with the Cloud9 coaching. And a lot of the times it leads into career search coaching. Mm-hmm. So we try to find meaningful work, or it leads into just, conversations back and forth about what we're supposed to be doing on this earth, right? Mm-hmm. So it always takes a bit of a different direction. And I think that's a common theme here, is that not only with this, but Cloud9 overall, it's all about interpretation. And your life is all about interpretation. And the book that I'm putting out there is all about interpretation. I'm a huge believer in that age-old saying of, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he can eat for life. And that's truly what I believe. I want to guide people to their own responses rather than just, laying it out there for them.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful. And having a coach is just, such an incredible tool and opportunity. And, as someone who's the coachee, it's, people don't realize it's a lot of work that your coach, a good coach will put you through a lot of work and a lot of reflection, but it's really, really powerful.
Intense. It is. It's intense. It's powerful. It's very introspective, but it leads to probably the most necessary and wonderful tools we can have about ourselves. And that's self-awareness.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So that's what we want. Every single experience we partake, if we have this heightened level of self-awareness where we really, really know who we are, then that's when we can start making the most accurate evaluations of, the experiences that we're undergoing and comparing that to the person who we know that we should become.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any stories of maybe a really meaningful moment or quote unquote success stories from any of the people that you've worked with in coaching? Obviously, without disclosing anything about who they are specifically, but I'm just curious to know kind of how you, through your coaching, helped people change their lives or find their cloud nine.
Yeah. So a recent coaching engagement, and it led to a cloud nine moment for sure, was with somebody who was just came in thinking that it was a simple job search. And he didn't want to hear any of the, positivity and happiness coaching that I had to provide, and no meaning and no purpose and no fulfillment or any of that. He just wanted to get a job and make money. But the more we dove into it, the more we realized that the jobs that he wanted and the salary that he desired, it was totally all about his family and what he could do for his family. So he wanted to provide for his family and he wanted to be around for his family. So that was important to him. So he needed something close to home. And basically, long story short, he received an offer that was basically irresistible. And it was more money than he could have ever imagined. And it was basically in the industry that he could have imagined. But he wasn't really a fan of the hours that he would be working, because he wouldn't have gotten to see his family. And when he first came into the coaching experience, that really wasn't on his radar. But now that we had worked through this together, he had that offer, and then he had another offer that was a little bit less money, but it afforded him the time to spend with his family. So the cloud nine moment of this situation was that he ended up rejecting the offer with the more money and the more prestige and all that good stuff, and accepting the offer where he made a little bit less and was able to work from home a couple of days and spend time with his family, right? So that's the real, cloud nine moment. It's what are you going to do in your life that is most in line with your core values, with your underlying purpose, with the story that you want to tell when you picture yourself on the last day on this earth. What's the story you want to tell, looking back and reflecting upon your life? And this one where he is able to spend more time with his family and not, have 3 or 4 years where he is void of them because he was working so much, that was cloud nine for him.
That's great. So you really helped him realize that that's what his main priority was, because a lot of times you just sort of chase the title or the salary or different things, and you don't realize that that's
and
not
there's
your
always a reason why that's what we're doing. And it just, it takes a little bit more digging in order to understand it.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. And I know you mentioned you listen to a lot of podcasts and you read a lot on these topics. How did you learn about how to coach and how to help people tell their stories and be more self-aware? What kind of training did you have? Was it mainly through listening and reading, or did you have other training that you had on that?
Yeah, so my coaching training is traditional. It's through Marshall Goldsmith's stakeholder-centered coaching. And I actually became the youngest United States executive leadership coach in the country last September. So I was working pretty much, using that Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaching methodology with startup founders. But I was also sprinkling in a little bit of personal growth and development and, giving them a morning routine from my first book. That's what it was about. And, doing mindset work from just really listening to podcasts and doing my own research and writing a lot. So it's really transitioned into a little bit of everything, where now, rather than having the main emphasis be this executive coaching, I only now use the executive coaching as a part of the overall Cloud9 coaching process.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a great program. And it's really interesting how you've kind of integrated all these different aspects of coaching and positivity and, self-awareness all together.
Yeah. That's what it's all about, right? It's about exploring enough to realize how many different nuggets of information are there. Obviously, we have information overload at this point in our lives. But like I mentioned before, having the self-awareness to evaluate all of these different things that are available to you and then implement into your own life, reevaluate, see what works best for you, and then pick and choose ultimately the strategies that you want to put into your coaching or your life or whatever it is, the book that you're writing, whatever it is.
Yeah. So I imagine you've, in the past 2 years since you left your sort of traditional corporate job and you've been on this journey to help people find their cloud nine. But I'd imagine that it's been a huge change for you as well, just, in terms of the type of job and through the coaching. I'm sure that's encouraged you to be very introspective and think about, what your cloud nine is and what your focus areas are. How do you feel like you've changed, or maybe what is the biggest thing that you've learned in these past 2 years since you've been on this cloud nine journey?
Yeah, that's an unbelievable question. And I think it all comes down to some work I've been doing recently about what is the mission behind Cloud9? What do I want to do for people? It's obviously not just a book, right? I want it to continue on after that. Mm-hmm. And the more I dive into my own life and what's made me the happiest, and the more I dive into every single Cloud9 story I have ever heard, the more I realize that Cloud9 moments and Cloud9 living and living a Cloud9 life, it's all about this. It's basically that in every situation, whether it is a simple conversation like this, whether it is a relationship that you have, whether it is a career decision, whatever, when you make the choice that is more difficult, that is the one that is more daunting, it's more challenging, it's literally the one that nobody else would expect you to take, except you go ahead and do it. That's when you are living life on Cloud9. So for me, it's my tagline is that I want to see the road less traveled in bumper to bumper traffic, because that's how my life has led to one that is purposeful and meaningful. It's basically been every time people told me, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, it's not what people do in society, that's not going to lead to success. Every time I didn't listen to that advice, it's actually led me down the ultimate path of happiness, right? So I'm not telling you out there to go ahead and stop listening to your parents or your friends or your friends' parents or your mentors or your colleagues or whoever it is. But what I am saying is to know and learn enough about yourself to realize deep down what you most intuitively want, and then follow that path, because that's how you're truly going to find your Cloud9 euphoria and moments of ecstasy. And the last thing with that I'll say is that I just mentioned that word ecstasy, and I actually looked up what it meant. And ecstasy comes from the Greek word ekstasis, which literally means to step to the side of, or to step outside of oneself. And on your road to living your Cloud9 life, and something that I do that's been so beneficial is I take a step to the side and I put myself in the clouds, right? Mm-hmm. And I look down at my life from this third party perspective, and I assess, and I really just come from a place of gratitude where I'm able to say, wow, look at what I have done. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at what I have built, right? And that's when I am totally just so enthralled by the life that I chose to live that it truly puts me on Cloud9 as well. So for you listening, it's all about, taking a step to the side and evaluating where you are in your life, and realizing, based on the story that you want to tell at the end of your life, how closely are you living aligned with that story?
Yeah, that's really great advice. Sometimes it's difficult or even a little scary to even think about doing that, because once you start going down that path mentally, it implies that, well, maybe I need to make a change here, and it could be something that's very disruptive or very uncomfortable. Right. Do you have any advice for people, in terms of either how to help them either take that first step to evaluate and step aside, or just to help motivate them and help them move through fear?
Absolutely. So moving through fear, we can definitely touch on, because that's my first book. Was basically, it is a morning routine, but it's more so a mindset to overcome anything that is outside of your comfort zone. My TEDx talk actually was called Getting Comfy with the Uncomfy. But anyway, so the first thing that I'll say, and I mentioned before how different I like to be. And if everybody says one thing, I like to say the other, and figure out, how I can also sway that to be a correct opinion. But the one thing that is so common nowadays that I can't stress enough is just coming from a place of gratitude, right? And every single day I'm telling people how much I love and appreciate them. I am, writing long, thought-provoking LinkedIn recommendations for people about how great they are and how much I enjoyed our conversation. So coming from a place of gratitude gives you that opportunity to take yourself outside of a situation and come from, the cloud perspective, because that's what it's all about. It's all about perspective. When you come from a place of gratitude, you get to realize what's going on in your life and all the positive things that you have compared to so many others that there are in the world. So it's all about gratitude. That's the one key tangible piece of advice I would give away. It's that every single day you should, do your gratitude in the morning or do your gratitude at night and really understand just how fortunate you are and phrase everything in a positive situation, in a positive light. The overcoming fear approach is more related to this thing I did called Comfy, which I mentioned before. And, to do Comfy, I think we could have a little fun here, Carolyn. So let's do it together.
Okay.
So first, on the count of 3, we're going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So in anything that is going to scare you, anything that you're setting out to do in this world, the first thing that we have to do is come from a place of calm. Because just like we did with that deep breathing, you don't want to feel stressed. You don't want to feel anxious. You don't want to be startled. So coming from a place of calm allows you to be in the mindset where you're the most clear and ready to go about whatever it is that you're doing. So with this routine that I have to help people overcome their fears, it's all about recommendations. So calm is this overall bucket, but then some of the recommendations within are, just like we did, deep breathing, yoga, meditation, going for a walk, washing the dishes always gets me calm. I don't know, whatever it is that you have the opportunity to say, oh, in my life, this really calms me down. Just like the journey to Cloud 9, it's up for your own interpretation. I don't want to tell you what to do. I want you to really figure it out for yourself. So O is a great one, which I really, really love. And in order to illustrate O, I'll just ask you, Carolyn, what's something that you're afraid of?
Gosh, I guess I'm afraid of stepping into a role that I'm not ready for.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's really great, because O is about openness and vulnerability, right? And the key to overcoming your fear is by getting the thoughts about this fear outside of your head and out into the world. So you and I, we just did openness with another person, right? Where in the morning, you reach out to somebody and you could say, hey, this has been on my mind lately. It's really scaring me. But you can also do openness that's in the form of gratitude, where you say, hey, I really just appreciate what you did for me yesterday. Or you can do accomplishments. Hey, I achieved this. Or you can do strengths like, hey, I really, been working on this. I just wanted to see if you noticed, something like that, where you're just opening up to another person. Or you can do openness with yourself. And that's usually in the form of journaling. So, you write down your strengths, your weaknesses, accomplishments, gratitudes, expectations, reflections, things like that to really, go into any situation with your heart on your sleeve rather than it cooped up inside of your head, your emotions inside of your head. So that's O. For the sake of time now, I think we'll just kind of run through the other ones. Sure. But if we were together, I said we may in the future get together and do a podcast recording. But if we were together, we'd do 10 jumping jacks right now because M stands for movement. And, I won't go too much into this, but because there's so much info out there about the importance of exercise, but it's just a way to get your energy going. And it's not really even about the physical aesthetics of exercise. It's more about the mental capacities. And for me, a walk, a run, 10 jumping jacks, it just re-energizes me, it recharges me, and literally turns on my brain and my body. So that's M. F is funny. And this one to me is the most important before any situation that is frightening. So with funny, I believe that so much in life is serious and there is so much going on in our lives that we should take seriously. But the less serious we take ourselves, the more appropriately we'll be able to respond to any situation rather than impulsively react to any situation, right? So I say, instead of, turning on CNN ever, turn on PNN. It's your positive news network. And that's just filled with funny memes and baby videos and puppy videos where you just smile. It's just a way to smile. And that's going to put you in this mindset of happiness and positivity and optimism rather than one that is, pessimistic and having you scared to do whatever it is that you're going to do. The last thing is why. And it's really the reason why we even have this routine and what it's all about. So why stands for you or your passion or your choice. And it's really just a way to focus on something that you want to do rather than something that you have to do. And that's what Cloud9 living is all about. It's who you want to be, what you want to do, and how you want to do it. So to finish off your routine before something that you actually do have to do, to finish it off with something that you know is your own, it's a great way to bring this whole thing together and come to that close just based off of you and who you want to be. So that's your comfy routine before anything stress or anxiety inducing.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing those tips.
Of course.
Yeah. So comfy and the getting comfy is actually, it's an acronym in addition to a word.
It's got a couple different meanings. So in the TED Talk itself, it's like first you have to get comfy in your own skin. That's first and foremost. So that's like the self-care approach coming from the inside out. Then once you've done a good enough job of that, actually the only way to really grow and move on as a person is if you deliberately get outside your comfy zone. But you hear that advice all the time, get outside your comfort zone, get outside your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But how do you do that? Boom, that's the last part where comfy actually turns into the acronym and you get to put it into practice.
Yeah, well, it's really helpful. That's so cool. So you mentioned before that you want the whole Journey to Cloud9 movement to go beyond your book. What goals do you have right now for the Journey to Cloud9?
Yeah, so it's just a lot of continuation of what I'm already doing. I'm going to keep talking to people around the world about how they interpret Cloud9 and how they live their Cloud9 lives. I'm going to keep doing podcasts. I'm going to keep doing content about stories and all that good stuff. I'm going to keep doing coaching, helping people pursue their true purposes. And then I'm going to do some talks, moving forward about different creative ways I can relay these concepts to people. But even further than that, look 5-10 years down the road, I would love to create a nonprofit that is Cloud9 related, where I help people, young people discover their purpose and maybe use that to get into the college of their dreams or, find the jobs of their dreams, something like that. And then even further down the road, I see a good amount of startup potential here where I don't know what it is, but there's some product out there that I know can really use these messages of positivity. And because of the product that we put out there, these messages of positivity will be able to go pretty widespread. So that's somewhere way down the road. It's like, just like we said in the beginning, there's never really an end, which, like you said, could be frightening, but it's also super exciting. It's like, what's next? What do I get to work on next? What do I get to build? What do I get to grow? What do I get to learn? So that's really, my own Cloud9 journey is about just continuing to figure things out, explore new territories and see what works for me and then relay that on to other people.
Right. That's exciting. Just be open to the possibilities, even if you can't see them yet, but there's great things out there. That is really fantastic. Wow. Jordan, thanks so much for coming on my show and sharing your story and sharing those great tips to help us find our own Cloud9s. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your work and your book?
Yeah. So, thank you so much, first and foremost, for having me on. This was an absolute pleasure. I hope people are able to, think about their lives in a new light, maybe, put themselves in the clouds and envision how their lives are going at the moment. So I'm just so grateful that I'm able to be on this show. So thank you so much, Carolyn.
Thank you.
To answer your question, really simple. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many choices. LinkedIn, you can just Jordan Gross, message me. I'll definitely answer. Or journeytocloud9.com. That's all spelled out. Journey, TOCloud9.com. And if you put your email address in the top bar where it says join thousands of others on their journey to Cloud9 or something like that, and then you click on not another newsletter, it'll be a way for you to stay in touch with this whole Cloud9 concept. Every Tuesday and Thursday, you'll get a 90-second video of somebody explaining their true Cloud9 moment. And then as the book gets closer, so think maybe January, February of 2020, you'll get updates, freebies, all the good stuff about the Journey to Cloud9 book that's coming out.
Great. And I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile as well as the Journey to Cloud9 website so that people can find it there in the show notes.
Amazing. Amazing. You are the best.
Thank you. Well, as we close out, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know or anything else that they can help or support you with?
Yeah. So I'll leave you with this very, very, very profound introspective thought. And it's actually the epigraph, the opening quote to the Journey to Cloud9. And it's basically been a quote that's been online, and you may have even heard it before, but it was by an anonymous source. And I initially had that in the book, but I recently changed it because I heard Ed Milet give a great rendition of this quote. And it goes as follows. Somebody once told me the definition of hell, and that it's on the last day on this earth, the person who you became will meet the person who you could have become. And those two people are complete strangers. But somebody also once told me the definition of heaven. And it's that on the last day on this earth, the person who you became will meet the person who you could have become. And those two people are identical twins. So just take a moment to really think about that one and, relate it to that fear of the what if versus the fear of the what concept, and really, live your life according to how similar you want it to look when you look back at it from the end.
Really profound words of wisdom. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Beyond 6 Seconds. Please help us spread the word about this podcast. Share it with a friend. Give us a shout out on your social media, or write a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. You can find all of our episodes on our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.